Welcome, Space Cadets, to episode 2 of this Let's Play series. We are with this tutorial series, really. This is going to be for newish players to Kerbal Space Program. This is Kerbal Space Program 2. This is the pre-release version, actually, so there will be some little bugs and things. This is my second go at recording, actually third go at recording this particular episode, for the simple reason that I've been experiencing some little graphic bugs along the way, so I've just restarted everything, and so hopefully we won't get that in this particular episode. I actually had finished the episode and then realised, there's all these explosions going on that we just don't want to be seeing. So anyway, hopefully we won't get those at this point in time. Now we're still back in the VAB here with the DAS Orbital 01, which is where we left it at the end of episode 1, which was to design the ship. Keep note of the delta V for this ship is 4,116, but this is actually in a vacuum, and so that's actually what this one is actually then highlighting, is what it would actually, how it would perform in a vacuum, but not how it would perform on the actual surface. And so when we go out to the launch pad, we're going to see a very, very different number, but as we get higher up, that number will then start to change. That's why, even though we were using the trip planner in through here, and we'll just go back across, just use the moon as an example, even though it was sort of showing us that we needed around about 3,400 delta V to get into a low orbit, and pretty much not very much more to then get back home, like to go back to the surface again, the 4,000 seemed like overkill. It's actually not. It's by the time it then sort of recalculates itself for that location, it's going to be a bit of a problem. So anyway, we'll figure that one out as we go. We will be changing this over the course of the series as well, by the way, when we sort of start to then go out to the moon and then do or the MUN and then do an actual landing. This will all become much more important, and it's not a hard set science. Just add a little bit extra on all the time for your sort of incompetencies, which everyone will have those, and B, the way the game is not considering you starting on Kerbin itself. I don't think there's a way to do that. There was in version 1 of the game. By the way, I keep on pointing out, I would have mentioned this in the introduction to the series. This game is early access as a new version of Kerbal Space Program. It's a reset, and so there's actually more things in version 1 at this point in time than there is in version 2. I don't mind. I love what the direction that they're taking this, and so slowly over time, this will then become a much, much better game than what Kerbal Space Program 1 is, which is already an excellent game. Okay, so let's go and launch this thing. We've done everything else. One thing I might mention as well, I could, if I wanted to, have my staging set. So we're going to start by launching that one through there. I could move both of these together so that when this one fires, this engine then fires up, and so that's something I could do if I wanted to combine them. Most ship designs would actually have that, but I'd suggest that you don't do it. Just be aware that they are different stages, which means that when this one separates, you then have to press space a second time to then fire the engines up. It just means that you've got a little bit of time to consider what's going on, and so we'll come to that basically once we're actually in space, or in the upper atmosphere, in orbit, hopefully in orbit. So let's go to the launch pad and get this thing going. It does launch surprisingly quickly. God, it's a good-looking game. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful game. So we're going to have a few different things to discuss here as we sort of go through. So we've already spoken about the staging back and through here. See how the numbers have dropped dramatically, so by a factor of 1,000, and that's because of the inefficiencies of trying to punch through this low atmosphere. If I go and open all of this stuff up, we can then sort of see that even this one here is about half the efficiency that it was when we started, and back in the vehicle assembly building. But the efficiencies will be fine once we actually then go out and hit the outer atmospheres, or hit deep space. It's going to be much more efficient. Anyway, let's just move that one back so we can see what the current engine actually is that we're sort of dealing with. This is the total delta V, or change in velocity, and this is the current projected change in velocity at this, like on the surface through here. Let's talk about the screen and some of the keyboard shortcuts we're going to need to use. Probably the most important one at this point in time is the comma, which will then pause time, or the space bar, which will then run time forward. Now, at the moment, I don't really mind if the time is running forward. You'll see that the sun is slowly moving through the sky. We're seeing the shadows slowly move. If you are launching at night time and you don't want to, just accelerate time down through here to go to the next morning. So by all means, just sort of go and do that. But we'll just keep it on a factor of 1 at this point in time. We have other things that we've got. This is our stability control. Stability has been turned on, which is also this button here. So if I turn that one off, that one gets turned off. If I turn it on, it gets turned back on. Now, the stability also then has these other markers, and I'll explain those when we're actually doing maneuver nodes, because you can see exactly what they are. They won't make much sense until then. We're also going to be looking at a few other little things as we go through. This is our throttle. The throttle can be contained or can be controlled very sort of briefly by using the control to make it go down, or the shift. This is left shift, left control to make it go up or down. We can also use the X key to turn it like off completely. That's quite a handy keyboard shortcut. And Z to go 100%. So X, Z. X is an important one, Z not so much. You can just use the shift if you're wanting to, just to sort of keep that one down and sort of move that one up. By default at the start, we actually have it turned on to full throttle. There are times when you won't want to do that, but I won't go into those. It's mainly if your thrust to weight ratio is really high and you don't really need to be wasting too much fuel in the lower atmosphere. You can sort of just bring the throttle backwards, but probably 95% of the times you're just going to have it at full throttle at the start anyway. Okay, so we've got that one established. We're not using RCS on this design. We will later on as we go through the tutorial series. I think everything's sort of set. I'll explain the nav ball as we start to make use of it. The next trigger that we're going to have in our mind is around about, say, 6 or 7 kilometers, which will be, say, 6,000, 7,000, back up through here. Stability is on, as we just sort of saw there before. The timer is just at factor of 1, which is fine. To get started, we can either press the green button or just press the space bar. I'm just going to use the space bar. It's now got a countdown. So it's now counting down. We can skip the countdown if we wanted to, but we're not going to, because I love the look of this. Let's just have a bit of a look and see what actually happens with all of this. We go ignition. And up she goes. The stability will then keep it fairly stable. If your ship starts to wobble around a lot, try turning off the stability. But generally that's a much bigger ships. This ship here is fine. So that's actually not a problem at all. Now as we go up, I'll just pause where we are right now. We can see certain things. I can sort of maneuver around. So our ship is now is now launching up. This is Kerbal Space Center in through this side. These are other launch pads. Eventually in the game, these will then be used for multiplayer, or you can launch from any of these as well if you're wanting to. Back over through here, we actually have the Kerbal Space Center, which we've sort of seen if you've been playing the game at all. There's the vehicle assembly building back over through this side, training center back over through here, the tracking station back over this way, and I forget what that one is there. There's another one as well. But anyway, they're the bits and pieces that we actually have at the Space Center. And so we're now just launching straight up into the sky. The factors that we need to be cognizant of, or sort of mindful of, is that is essentially now the apoaps, the AP, is really what we're targeting, what we're sort of trying to get to. And we don't really want to be pushing much more than around about 80 kilometers is what we're going to be aiming for. At the moment, we've got an apoaps of 600 meters, which means that we're currently at 300 meters. If we turned all the engines off, it would go up to 600 and then we'd come crashing back down again. But we want this one to start to sort of get higher and higher. And it's going to reach that 600 meters in 5 seconds if we turned all the engines off. But we're going to keep the engine sort of rattling away. We're now traveling at 55 meters per second. This is the height above the ground. So we're looking at this factor, we're looking at this factor, and we're actually looking at the timing factor as well. We don't want the timing factor to blow out more than about 2 or 3 minutes. If we're starting to see this apoapsis blowing way out, it means we're probably going too fast. So sort of an ideal number would be around about a minute to 2 minutes, I think, for a newish player. For a more experienced player, you'd be wanting to even sort of keep it a bit lower for certain aspects of it. So around about 40 seconds. But a minute or 2 minutes is going to be ideal for us because it's going to give us a bit of time to then set things up. Now, when we get to around about, say, 6 kilometers up, we're going to start to push it over. And this is an indicator of as to what the is to where the actual ship is. Now, what we're doing is essentially we're looking straight down on the ship in through this instance, and or this is actually the direction of the ship itself. The little white marker that we see underneath there, which is like a V with a dot in the middle of it, which we can't see because there's the screen indicator over the top of it, is actually the desired direction of the ship. And so we're telling it to go straight up. And so this is actually like the nav ball is a three-dimensional sphere. And we're pointing straight up into the middle of it. And the top of the sphere is blue, the bottom of it is orange or brown. And so we're just only seeing the blue because that's where we want to be going. And so we're actually indicating that we want to be heading up this way. And if we start to see brown, it means we're actually pointing the other way. So we need to be pushing this one up. And so that's the direction that we're actually trying to sort of have that's the orientation of the craft. The little marker that we see through here is actually the same marker that we see over through this side, which is called prograde, which means it's the direction that the ship is traveling in. So the orientation of the ship and the direction happen to coincide. Perfect. That's exactly what we want, because we expect as we have thrust, we want it to go the other way. Now, if we turned the engines off but still kept this orientation, we'd start to find that this would then flip around, and eventually we'd get this one, which is retrograde, meaning the ship would be dropping backwards through the atmosphere. But anyway, we want to keep this one going straight up. Now, at the moment, we have a periapsis of negative 600 meters, so we've got 600 meters into the ground, essentially, and that's going to stay there until we start to push it sideways. And we're going to start pushing it sideways at around about 6 or 7 kilometers. Anyway, let's just go and unpause. Don't unpause with the space bar. Be very, very careful about that, because that will then get rid of the stage. And I did that in one of my earlier recordings where I screwed up, and so I had to sort of redo it. That was one of the tutorials. I'm just so used to using space bar for pause and unpause. Anyway, just unpause the game. Up she comes. God, it is such a beautiful, beautiful game. At around about 2 kilometers, we're going to go through the cloud layer. And this one does slow the game down enormously. So just be aware of that. I'm just going to try to sort of get past that without too much drama. We're at 1.5, so we're now going to come up towards the clouds. Here we go. We're going through the clouds now. So these are three-dimensional clouds now. They're not just a flat plane, which is what they were in KSP1. And so look at that. God, it's such a beautiful, beautiful game. So we're now sort of looking back then through there. We're now at 2 kilometers up. And we're now starting to push through this soupy atmosphere. We really want to get at least out of this bottom atmosphere before we start to try to do any maneuvering with this periapsis, with the PE. We're now, even if we turned everything off, we'd now actually have we'd be 6 kilometers up, and it would take us 22 seconds to get there. So we're accelerating quite nicely. I'm just going to get the D key ready. And so once we sort of hit this other little line up through here, I'm going to start to push it over very, very slightly along this 90-degree line. That's the line that we want to be going to get the orbits. So, and I'll talk more about complicated orbits in future videos, but the default orbit for us is to push towards the 90. We can go in whichever direction we want. Now we're at 6 kilometers. I'm just going to start pushing the D. See how we're now moving? The ship is now moving slightly over. It's still heading straight up, but we're pushing the orientation over now. And the gimbaling of the engine is just pushing away a little bit. As we get towards 10 kilometers, we want to be sort of moving around this line here, which is at 45 degrees. Sort of where we want to be. So we're now at 10 kilometers, so we'll just keep on pushing it over. And this is now starting to come across, and we're now going to start to see the periapsis come up. We've now got an apoapse of 20 kilometers, which is good. Just keep it on this sort of direction. We don't want to go too far away from the prograde marker, from the actual, because it's inefficient. So the more we can sort of keep over on this sort of side, the better. And I'm now just going to keep on looking. We're now 42 kilometres away, sorry, 42 seconds away from where the apoapse would then be. We don't need to be on our side yet. We're only 13 kilometres up. We're still in this atmosphere. We want to be out of the atmosphere. I'm just going to keep it at around about this 45 degrees now for a little while. And just wait until we sort of start to see this one get up to close to the 80 kilometres. Such a beautiful, beautiful program, this one. It's stunningly good. It is lovely. We're starting to now see the stars. You can spend time to just drink it all in, basically, with what's actually happening. Again, I'm just going to keep it sort of on this angle. We're now 20 kilometres up. We're now sort of getting into the higher atmosphere. So let's start to now move this one sideways a little bit. So bring it sort of towards the horizon, which is right there. Again, this is our actual orientation indicator, as into the direction of the actual ship itself, and this is the direction that the ship is travelling. So it's actually travelling more up than following the actual direction of the ship. We now have an apoapse of 44. So again, I'm mindful of trying to get this one up. So I want to keep this one in the blue. I don't want it to go all the way down. It's still a little bit inefficient where we actually currently are. I'll just move it back a little bit. Now at 50 kilometres, and we're now at 1:25. Okay, I'll sort of try to keep it around about the 2 minutes. This will start to accelerate because we're pushing up, and this will start to come up a little bit, and we'll start to I'll have a look once this one actually does hit the 80. We're only at 33, so 33 kilometres up, but we're now sort of hitting the upper atmosphere now. When we get to 70, so we're halfway out of the atmosphere for Kerbin at this point in time, and there we go. I'll just press I'll just pause it there at 85. We're now 2.5 minutes away from reaching that point, and this is now, if I let it go too much further, it's going to end up becoming a bit of a problem. Now we've nearly run out of we've only got 83 more delta V, so I might as well actually let it do its thing actually at this point in time. I will actually lay it over, but let's have a quick look at the map at this point in time so you can get a bit of a feel for what's actually happened to this point. So just press M. And so this is the map itself. And so you can see there that we're now laying this thing over. When we first started, we were straight up and down. And I shall just... Well, we're straight up and down, basically just going straight up and straight down. We've been laying it over now, so this is actually now pushing out a little bit. And what I will do is I'll just go and I can unpause and still drive the thing from here. So let's just go and do this. What we want to do is we want to have the apoapse, which is the highest point of our orbit, at around about, well, it's now 85, which is more than what I was aiming for. I ultimately want this to be around about 100, would be what I'll actually aim for, about 100 now. But I'm going to push this thing over now, right, so to go slightly below the horizon. I need to push this one out further. This is where we're going to crash into the planet. So I'm going to unpause and press the D key and just push this one right over now, below the horizon. In fact, we've just run out of delta V, so we're no longer moving. You can see went up to 92 in the end there. So we've hardly got any maneuverability. We're a couple of minutes away, and this has hardly moved. Let's go back and press M again. Let's get rid of this stage. So when we actually click the next one now, this is going to then fire and ditch that actual stage there. So let's just go and do that. Press space, bang, off she goes. So that's now sort of disappeared behind us, 4 meters, 5 meters, 6 meters, etc. And we're now just left with our ship. Now remember how we didn't actually fire this thing up. If I've got this one fired, I'm just going to press X. I'm going to press space again because it didn't actually fire. It's now the active motor. And so I can now do anything I like. We're still a minute or a couple of minutes away from the apoapse. If we just go and press M, again, we can actually start to maneuver things in through here. So I'm going to now put a maneuver node in. I'm going to go and click on the apoapse and create a maneuver plan. And now I'll just pause again for 1 second and just talk about what we've actually just done. We're now seeing two splashdown areas. one for the stage that we just dropped and one for our spacecraft. Eventually we'll lose sight of that other, and we won't even know where it's going to end up. So that will then disappear fairly soon. We've now placed this one. I can't actually maneuver this. I don't know if that'll change. I hope it does change at some point where you can actually do the maneuver nodes with the game paused, but at this stage we can't. And to talk about this, I do need to keep it paused. I will actually unpause again very briefly. I'll click on it and then pause again. I'll just keep the game paused, and we'll talk about the maneuver node. I can now sort of zoom in on the maneuver node and sort of show what's going on with that one. So this is the maneuver node in through this side. You'll see it's got 6 different vector indicators. We've got green, red, and blue. And this just so happens that this is green, reddish, or magenta, and cyan or blue. And these actually relate to the same indicators that we have through here. And this is not the direction that the ship is pointing in. This is the direction the ship is traveling in. And so in relation to, for example, Kerbal. And so we actually have the prograde, we have the retrograde, which is the green. We then actually have over through this side with the blue, we have the one that moves away from the planet is this one here, which is the radial in. And so that the radial in will then move us sort of in a direction where it actually swings away from the actual planet itself. And then we have the radial out in through the side as well. It's just a direction marker essentially. And then we have the normals traveling across the we've got the normal and then the anti-normal, which is sort of then going to maneuver around on the surface of the planet, if you sort of know what I mean. So we can change our directions with any of these if we wanted to. Now I have to unpause the game to start to push this out. I'm going to go to the prograde marker, and I'm going to start to push this one out just so I can sort of see what's going to happen through here. And so we can sort of tweak so we can have a look at the settings in through this other side. So I'm going to press the this one here and just drag this one out, and it's going to then push that one out through there, getting a little bit further. There we go. The apoapsis is now sort of indicated back in there. I'll just pause that again. Now the periapsis on the other side is not really far enough out. So that's actually, we want to get this one, that's still way, way too close to the actual, the planet itself. Now I can't see any way to actually sort of see what that indicator is actually giving us, what sort of information, unfortunately. I'm thinking at some point in the future, you will actually be able to see what this actual figure is. It's actually quite important. We've still got the crash from the other area. I can't actually tweak that without actually moving the game forward. And we're still a minute 25 away. I'm going to try to get this thing so that the periapsis and apoapsis then flips around. And that will be where the indicator, or when it starts to sort of do that, it means that the periapsis should then be a fair way out. So let's just go and unpause and push this one out. See how it's now, so it's just starting to flick at this point. That should be pretty good. So we're still a minute away from here. Let's just go back across and just deselect, and I'll just manually sort of control what's going on with this as well. So if I just go back and press M, one thing we want to be doing is making sure that we actually are traveling in not just the direction of the ship itself, but in the actual, now we've got the maneuver direction. So we'll go and click on that one. That will then keep the ship. By the way, that reaction wheel that we have inside this particular one, which we spoke about in the last episode, was how this ship is now currently maneuvering. And so when we go to there, we've still got 47 seconds before we have to do the burn. And this burn is going to require 722 to actually get this one done. Now I'm still going to be looking at my periapsis, but most important, the apoapsis, but also the periapsis. So I think I'll start by doing a full burn. I'm going to press the Z key when this one does run out. And this, because this is designed to run at full strength, but we don't have to if we don't want to. We can actually sort of just tweak things. And I may sort of, as we get sort of part way through the burn, I'll then start to sort of tweak it using the left control. So 20 seconds to go. And that's the delta V. We're going to have a lot of delta V left over once we finish this particular burn, just try to get into orbit. Now, when we get into orbit, the whole orientation of the ship will then flip as well. So don't worry too much about what happens with the actual look of the ship. And it doesn't really matter when I start this burn either, to be honest. I've got to be close to the apoapsis, but there we go. We've got a green light there. Let's just go for it. It's now full bore. Here comes the delta V. So it's now sort of using the delta V It's still pointing in the right direction of the actual ship itself. We've got 28 seconds of this one here. And we'll just sort of let this one sort of develop. See how the apoapsis isn't changing much. The periapsis is coming up slowly. As we get closer with these numbers, I'm just going to start to use the control. Still got 16 seconds of full burn. When we get down to around about 5 seconds or so, I'm probably going to, once I start to see these things move, I will actually then sort of pull back a little bit on that one through there. Still got 9 seconds. Here we go, here we go, here we go. We're now going to be out of crashing from the planet. Let's just pause there. So we've just pulled this one up now. If we press back on the M, we'll now see that with the current way that the ship is working, it's going inside the atmosphere. It's like 8 kilometers up, which is actually going to then slow it down if we let that happen. Technically, it's almost an orbit. Let's just go and press M again. By the way, I'm sort of now more interested in this than I am in this. So, because I know that this is what I want to get this one close to where I am with the apoaps. And so I'm just going to go and unpause, and I'm going to start to slowly sort of pull back on my thrust in through here. It's now 60. As soon as it gets over 70, it then flips around like that. And I'm just going to now press X. We're now at 100 kilometers apoaps, 80 kilometers for the periapsis. We're in orbit. So yay us, there we are. So we've still got this other thing 20 kilometers away now, and we actually have achieved a stable orbit, well into the out of the atmosphere of Kerbin. Again, 70 is the magical number through there, and so but we don't have a circular orbit as such. Now, if I wanted to, I could go to the apoaps and then raise the periapsis a little bit. I've still got 500 delta V. But let's just do a circuit of the planet. Let's just speed up time and just have a bit of a look and see what actually does happen. So we'll speed up time in through here. We'll just get ready to come back down to the to 1 times. So there goes we're now on the dark side. Now Kerbal Space Center will be below us at some point. We'll watch for the sunrise. Here it comes. It's such a beautiful program, this one. So now just traveling at 1 times speed. I'll go a little bit faster. It's 4 times. 10 times. There we are. Ah, lovely, lovely, lovely. Sunrise on Kerbin, our first sunrise. And so this is now, we're sort of now heading probably towards where the apoaps is. If we just press the M key, we'll just go back to number 1 again. Here we've gone past the periapsis. Actually, see how we've still got the burn node. Now, if we do this burn node, we end up going further out. Let's just go and ditch that, just so we can see exactly what's going on. In fact, we haven't hit the apoaps just yet. Okay, so let's go and let's go and start to sort of maneuver. So we bring down. Let's try to get close to the spaceport. So where we actually are is actually ideal for this. So we're traveling at 1 times speed. I'll just go and put a maneuver plan in, and even if we come back and do it next time, we're stable at the moment. We'll just go retrograde. This is now going to become the apoaps, and see how we're now hitting the planet there, and that's only 176 delta V. We don't actually need to even hit the planet. Let's just do a burn where we actually don't hit the planet at all. We just use the atmosphere to break where we are, and so that's going to then that's going to still hit just on the other side of the space center, but the atmosphere will slow us down. This one here, the periapsis, is well inside the atmosphere. Now we're coming in on this node in 27 seconds. It's only 79 required delta V. Let's do it. Let's go and again just use this maneuver node. We're now going to flick around, so we're now pointing at the maneuver node itself, and it's wanting to do a full-on burn. But let's just go and watch the periapsis. So we'll just go and slowly sort of do this. We don't have to go full on here because we're just trying to bring the periapsis back in, and we're just going to watch it until it goes down to say about 15. Or maybe even 10, and we'll just press the X when it gets to 10. There we are. So the periapsis is now inside the atmosphere. We can do different things. Now just go back and get rid of this node again. And that way so that's still now our highest point in the orbit. The periapsis is actually now over the top of the space center, but the atmosphere should slow us down quite dramatically. We're ready to go home. The atmosphere will actually will slow us right down now. So let's just go back and press M, come back into the actual ship itself. So we're now heading towards home. We no longer need this stage anymore. We just need to get ready for the actual for the parachute. So I'll press space again, and then this will then fire this guy up, and bang, off she goes. We've got there is no, at this point in time in the game, there is no heat, and so we're now just going to come in, and we don't have any control over the ship. One thing we can do in the ship is I'm going to turn off the stabilizer now and just let the actual aerodynamics of the ship sort of look after itself. Now, if we start to maneuver, this is the reaction wheel. And we should start to see our electrical current should change a little bit, but it's not actually at this point in time. As we use that reaction wheel, that should start to sort of push things around. So I'm just actually pushing the WASD keys at this point in time just to sort of maneuver. I didn't do a spacewalk or anything, but feel free to do that if you're wanting to, just to do a bit of an experiment. So you can just click on your Kerbal Naut. Actually, I'll just show you. You just do that. He's then just sits on the outside. Don't let go unless you're really wanting to sort of have a bit of fun. We're still miles up. We're still 90 odd kilometres up outside. He is doing his little bit of a spacewalk. Just press B to go back on board. Bang, he's back inside again. And we're out of fuel, of course. We don't have any fuel. We just got to wait now for the parachute. Now the parachute, I'll just speed up time a little bit as we sort of start to come back in towards the ground. I'll just go to say 100 times speed, and then we'll start to, as we come into the atmosphere, I'll just sort of slow it down a little bit in through here. Have a quick look at the map again, just see where we are. So this is us with a bit of debris coming in as well. And so we want to. It's going to be dusk where we actually sort of end up hitting the surface. So we're coming across this next big landmass. God, it's such a beautiful, beautiful program. But we're just starting to sort of now hit the atmosphere. And this will then reorientate, because we've turned off the stabilizer, it won't fight with the way that the ship wants to work. And it's going to be like a teardrop. It's going to start to have this end, the aerodynamics will then push this one back. So I'm not touching, there we go, you can see my fingers, not doing anything, but the ship will start to wobble at that point. Eventually, and not too far off, I would assume, there will be heat that will then sort of be generated, and this is where the heat shield will be important. But at this point in time, it's not there. Actually, sorry about the frame rate, particularly of my camera. But anyway, you can see there it's now going to start to try to stabilize as it comes back down. I'm traveling at 4 times speed. I can't go any faster than this at this point in time. And now we don't want to be pressing the parachute until we're at least inside 20 kilometers. And we also don't want to do it when we're traveling at this sort of speed. So we're traveling at 2.3 kilometers per second, which is just crazy fast. We want to be really quite low speed, and as we hit the soup of the atmosphere, as we sort of come into the atmosphere, we're going to find this will start to slow down. We'll speed up initially when it's all very, very slow, but we'll eventually slow right down. And so this atmospheric braking is what we're going to be doing through here will actually slow us, and we'll find that the periapsis, see how the periapsis is already hitting the planet because we've slowed down enough in this outer atmosphere. If I go back to M again, we can then sort of see that this is actually now creeping back. We've already missed the space center by quite a way because the atmospheric braking is sort of slowing us right down. It's interesting to see that. The apoapse is just now basically not going to have any real bearing. The ground, we're actually still coming back in through there. I'll just go back and press M. So we're 30 kilometers up. Again, not until we get to about 20 kilometers do we have to start to worry about anything, but we're going to hit the ocean. And you'll get used to, as the more you play the game, you sort of be able to then target where you end up coming in on different things with the game. See our speed has gone right down because of the atmosphere. We're now sort of hitting still this upper atmosphere in through here. 22 kilometers. I might just go back to normal speed again for a little while. So this is, and the craft is now just, it's got its own direction. I could still try to maneuver the craft if I wanted to, but I really don't need to. In fact, it looks like the electricity may not be working properly because that reaction wheel... Actually, I think with the reaction wheel, we can still do that whenever we feel like it. It's just that we're not really using anything that does have power. Now, we're under 20 kilometers, and we can technically pop the parachute at this point in time. But I'm going to wait until we're actually traveling much, much slower. So probably around about 10 kilometers. And the angle that we're coming in is getting narrower and narrower. If we press the M key, we can then sort of see that it's now very, very close to where we want to come in, or where we will be coming in. And it's just the atmospheric braking is really slowing things down a lot. So it's still a long way up. Now, if there was a flame, if the heat of the craft was in this version of the game, we'd be seeing all sorts of heat effects coming off the craft itself. That will come. Look at the speed, just dropping super, super fast. And so while it's doing that, with the parachute isn't going to make any real great difference at this point in time. We're now at 12 kilometers up. And still coming backwards. It's probably safe now for us to pop the parachute. So I'm going to press the space bar again and pop the parachute. I'll just zoom back out so we can sort of see it. If we go too fast, it will then rip. But this is fine where we are here. And so now it's just going to slow us down even more. We're going to get more drag through the parachute before it actually opens. And it won't open until it's around about 1 or 2 kilometers above the surface. And then it will open right up. So we'll just sort of come flying in. Might just speed up time. It does take a bit of time for all this to sort of work. God, it's such a beautiful, beautiful program. 6 kilometers up. Still traveling very, very fast. Now remember, we want to be traveling at ideally less than 10 meters per second when we do sort of hit. Let's just go back to number 1 again. So we're now at 1.5 kilometers. Coming in. Still traveling at 2 meters per second. Parachute deploys. We're about 600 meters above ground. And now the speed is now dropping dramatically. So we're now under the magical 10 meters per second, and so everything's going to be safe and sound. If we had more weight, this would then be much, much higher, but this is a very, very comfortable speed now for us. And that is how to get into orbit and get out of orbit again. Hope that all made sense. I can just speed up time a little bit and just go 4 times speed until we do the splashdown. As soon as it splashes down, the parachute will then just disappear through the magic of Kerbal Space Program. And again, we've got a stabilizer turned off, 200 meters coming in, 100 meters there. Let's just go back to normal speed. Wait for the splashdown. God, it looks good, this game. There's the shadow. And that is the orbital tutorial done, basically. So 50 meters up, coming in again at a nice slow speed. So the next thing we'll do in the next episode is actually take it out to the moon. There we go, it's now splashed in. And the parachute will then drop and gone. And so we now have the craft is just waiting here in the ocean, ready for pickup. And so it doesn't sink as such. It's just just all the waves that we sort of see in through this side. And so now what we do is we just press the escape key and just go to recover vessel. And then Bill is happy. He's back home. We can recover the vessel, confirm recovery, confirm. Mission done, and then we just get a mission report. And so mission time was 35 minutes. The highest altitude was 93 kilometers. The highest speed over land was 10 meters per second. Highest speed overall was 2,280 meters per second. I thought we got over 3,000 actually, but anyway, that's okay. The ground distance covered was only 12 meters. The total distance traveled was 267. I don't know where it's getting this number from. That doesn't seem right. The highest G-force experience was 269. That doesn't seem right either. I don't know where it's getting that figure from. But anyway, that's the timing of what did happen with it. So vehicle launched, vehicle landed, vehicle recovered. So we can now revert to the launch. We can go to the tracking station or just close it. So we'll go and close that one. Bill Kermit has now come back from his mission. And we are done and dusted. So we can now just go back to the Space Center. And so it's now night time. Back in through here. Launch pads have got like lights and things on. Again, we can speed up time to sort of go to the next morning if we wanted to. There we go. We can see the dusk. So it's sort of like it's the end of the day, essentially, for that first day. Successful day for us. We'll come back tomorrow or whenever this next video comes up, and start and do more of these tutorials. So the next one will actually now try to do a more involved rocket, which will then just not go into orbit and back, but go to the moon and back. And then after that we'll do an actual lander and actually land on the moon. So got a few things coming up. Thanks for watching. I will catch you in the next episode.